Mais uma vez estamos aqui para tutorial.
Once again, we are here for this tutorial of this series. God calls us into His own kingdom and glory. The title of the book is, After All, What Restrains the Antichrist, which corresponds to week 4. After all, what restrains the Antichrist. And the verses for reading are in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 2 through 9. It says, not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or letter. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Do not remember that when I was with you, I told you these things, and now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Very good. So this subject on what restrains the Antichrist is being very much discussed in this church age, and no one gets to a verdict of what it really means. What is restraining the appearing of the Antichrist? Many different opinions, different teachings, but we believe that the Lord is giving us this revelation. It is something simple before our eyes. So the daily food is in your hands. Let me make use of using my outline to follow up on, and then you can follow with your daily food, okay? What really is restraining the lawless one? The Thessalonians knew it, for Paul told them, that is in verse 5 and 6, meaning that when Paul was with them, even for a few weeks, he had raised this subject and explained the subject. He did not make it clear in these verses. Maybe because he thought it was something very obvious. But over these centuries, it was difficult, this explanation. So, we believe that what the Lord revealed to us is this. It is something simple. He will only be revealed in the appointed time. The lawlessness is anomia in Greek, which is the condition of those who do not fulfill the law, those who despise the law and trespass it. The word lawless one in Greek is anomos, which is someone without a law or disrespecting the law, or someone who does not want to be subject to any restriction of the law. After all, what restrains him? What does it mean to turn away what is restraining him? For the man of lawlessness to appear. Actually, it is the law itself. If the lawless one is a man without a law, what is still preventing him from appearing and make what he is proposed? It is exactly the law. The law restrains him, restricts him, still holds him. So, certainly, it is the law itself that restrains the appearing of the lawless one. God promised to take out the children of Israel from Egypt, releasing them from slavery and burden, and to took his people to be his God and to lead them to the land that he promised to give Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. This is in Genesis 6 through 8. At that time, humanity lived in many kingdoms governed by men. Whether in Mesopotamia, whether in Egypt, they served other gods. This is in Joshua 24:2. Idolatry was present among all the nations. If anyone wants to have a biblical reference, Judges 2:12, 1 Samuel 8:8, 1 Kings 9:9, 2 Kings 17:7, 2 Chronicles 7:22, and Jeremiah 44:8. But God wanted people to be his own, who knew the one and true God. This people would be different from everybody else on earth. They would be God's own special people among every people. They would be, for God, a kingdom of priests, the holy nation. They would have to hear the word of God and to keep his covenant. Exodus 19:5 and 6. That is, they were the only nation on earth that would not worship the idols, would not be a heathen and pagan country like the other nations. God gave his people, through Moses, the Ten Commandments and the constitution of this new kingdom. Exodus 21 through 7. That is, the only nation with the constitution that have the laws given by God. So next to the Ten Commandments, God also gave the laws. The law regarding the altar, regarding the Hebrew slaves, regarding murders, regarding violence and accidents, regarding properties, on thefts and losses, civil and religious laws, laws on the exercise of righteousness, false testimony or perjury, on the judges, on the Sabbath, laws on the annual feasts and promises regarding Canaan. All of these laws, with the Constitution given, the Ten Commandments, that would be to restrain this people for the people to fulfill them. They were God's people with the laws enacted by the one and true God. The law of God by God's arrangement ended up becoming the foundation for the culture and the Western culture, of the whole Western culture. This became the great hindrance for the lawless one to appear, for he will not respect the law, will not be subject to any restriction of the law. As Ben-Gurion said in his book, The Awakening of a State, people who gave the world great and eternal truths and ethical imperatives, people who prophesied on the oneness of the Creator and the creation, on the Axel character, the man was created after God's image, on social justice, universal peace, loving our neighbor. This revealed the revelation of the final day, the revelation of a new human society. All of that was written by Ben-Gurion, the founder of the State of Israel in 1948. Paul preached in Athens for the Greeks, idolater Greeks, polytheists. The God had made the world and everything in it, he being the Lord of heavens and earth. He doesn't dwell in sanctuaries made by human hands. He is not served by human hands. as if he needed anything, for he himself gives everyone life, breathing, and everything else. He made the whole human race out of one to dwell on the face of the earth, setting the times previously established and the limits of his dwelling place, to seek God if they can find him. But he's not far from each one of us, for we live in him, we move in him, and exist in him. Some of your poets have said, because we are his generation. This is recorded in Acts 17 from 24 to 31. The Brazilian legislation is based upon legal dispositions of the law to Israel. In the law, in the constitutional rights, civil rights, commercial right, work, labor rights, and even procedural rights. Despite of the rest of one day for physical recovery after every 7 days, considered as much as the most original contribution of Israel to the laws in the world. There is also concern with righteousness, which is the main point of the Jewish law. This is in Deuteronomy 1:17, 16:19, and Leviticus 19:15. This leads us to the procedural law, pointing out the need for investigating, questioning, searching. Deuteronomy 13:18. That is, so no one is condemned based on one testimony. Deuteronomy 19:15. And also forbidding to pledge millstones, a product needed for livelihood. This is in Deuteronomy 24:6. This rule was Brazilian procedural law vetoing the origin of the pledge, the human government in Luke 4:5-7, and John 12:31, 14:30, 16:11, and Ephesians 2:2. Nimrod was a type of Antichrist. He was the first to oppose God. Genesis 10:8-12. Nimrod founded a kingdom, a human government, in opposition to God. He was the first man to be deified on earth, that is, to put himself in the place of God, boasting as if he was God himself. Second Epistle of Paul to Thessalonians 2:4. According to history, he introduced idolatry. His wife Semiramis, later on known as Artemis or Diane of Ephesus, she was the queen of heavens, worshipping the people of Israel. Genesis 7:18. Cam begot Cush, who begot from Semiramis Nimrod. Later on, Semiramis would become the wife of Nimrod, practicing incest. The expressions mighty before the Lord in verse 9 do not have a positive connotation, because he became the first tyrant or dictator, establishing a new world order in his time. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Barak, Akkad, and Tyne, in the land of Shinar, that is Babylon. Out of that land, he went to Assyria, to a second region, and built Nineveh, Rebaim, and Thar. Among Nineveh and Thar, he built the great city of Genesis 10:10-12. Babel and Nineveh became great nations, which are Babylon and Assyria, both opposing God. And the goal of Nimrod was to form a unique system of worldwide government through globalization, with one people, one language, one religion controlled by him, and him being a god with the other idols. It is the same proposition of the Antichrist. His intention was to form a covenant with the whole humanity against God, an evident rebellion against God. The building of the city in the Tower of Babel had the intention of overlapping the glory of man over the glory of God, exalting man's name over God's name. If humanity were joined together in their anthropocentric efforts, there would be no limit for its rebellion against God. Genesis 11:3-4. That is why God confused their language. That is why God had to intervene, confusing their language and scatter them abroad. They stopped building. Genesis 11:6-9. The Tower of Babel was to worship the stars, the moon, and the sun, serving as a model to every temples in Babylon, which were called ziggurats in Mesopotamia, to worship the god the sun. The last step of a ziggurat, usually they had 7 levels, were considered the entry of heaven, the gateway to heaven. The rage of the nations, of the kingdoms of the earth, and the princes was against the Lord, aimed at bursting, cutting open his stones. Psalms 2:1-3, we see that they wanted to break their bonds and cast away cords. What the nations want, it's the one to oppose God, is to get rid of any restriction from God's law, any restriction of what God set for Christians. Postmodernists want to eradicate, to swipe out the Jewish Christian culture considered outdated, extreme, with a segregation and positive and intolerant. They hate Christians who believe in the Bible, who say the truth. They fight for deconstruction of the theological ground, the Jewish Christian base, deconstructing all these volumes from this foundation considered outdated. Without deconstructing the Jewish Christian culture, which is rooted in the Western culture, the Antichrist will have no way to appear. There is no absolute truth and universal truth, they say. As a consequence, there are no moral principles ruling the conduct of people universally. They will break the bonds of God's law. They will be free to do then whatever they please, what give them pleasure and satisfaction. Selfishness gets in play. Second Samuel 3:1-5. Despite the collective Deuteronomy 12:8. Sorry, it's 2 Timothy actually. 2 Timothy 3:1-5. Becoming relative the values, destroy any evidence which balance judgments. Why? Because if there's no absolute truth, then a society will be without a law. Will be destroying any moral or ethical value which balances humanity. That will destroy family, faith in God, the obedience to the Word, to the Bible, allowing all sort of moral lewdness. Those ideas are being worked out in schools, universities, in culture, in media, and in social media. This concept is under our nose, challenging and undermining Christian faith. LGBTQ plus fight against abuse of righteousness. Yet it doesn't become this conduct acceptable before God and before His Word. What happens in practice, it is that society must accept their conduct as normal. They end up influencing strongly the teenagers and young ones with their thoughts. In summary, apostasy is a rebellion against God and against anything that comes from God. And the structure of faith, it is our salvation and safety. I hope that I was able to help you, making it clear this great revelation that God gave us on what really restrains the appearing of the men of lawlessness. It is the light self, which is sovereignty of God, which is brought into the world, the Western world especially. This prevents the appearing of the Antichrist. Yet, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work precisely to deconstruct the foundation of the law, for the lawless one appear free from the law, without the law of God, without any bonds connecting men with God, be cast away. They consider it to be freed from God. So I hope that you are clear with that. We are on God's side, on the side of the truth, on the side of righteousness. There is the one truth, really. There is really the Bible. It's our evidence of the truth. We have, thank God, the Spirit inside of us, guiding us in every truth. May God bless you all. Amen.